What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Northern Kentucky University political scientist Michael Baranowski. I'm joined today by my conservative counterpart, former congressional staffer and D.C. area attorney, Sam Dewey. Hey, Sam, how you doing?
I am doing well.
I'm getting by. I guess sometimes Saturday morning seems earlier than other days. I don't know anyway, but
yeah, doing well is code for surviving.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting by. You don't want to know, right? Anyway.
When someone says they're doing well in DC, that means heads above water, but that's about it.
Gotcha. Good to know. So furiously dog paddling, essentially. All right.
Something like that.
I'll keep that in mind. Well, anyway, let's when Donald Trump was reelected, I was reasonably sure that it was bad news for Ukraine. And until fairly recently, I think that seemed to be pretty on track. But of late, President Trump's been posting about his disappointment with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and saying recently that if Russia doesn't agree to a ceasefire in 50 days, the country would face very severe tariffs, including secondary tariffs on any country that buys Russian oil. And President Trump has also signed off on an arms deal with Ukraine in which NATO countries will buy weapons from the U.S., with the weapons then being given to Ukraine. It's expected that this will earn the United States billions of dollars in additional weapon sales. And, we in the weekend show, we talked about one thing that President Trump is doing or his administration is doing or not doing that's angered part of the base. That's the whole transparency thing with the Epstein files. And now we also have a part of the base that is not a big fan of foreign wars necessarily, wants that kind of splendid isolationism, if you will. And now is Donald Trump becoming a fan of Ukraine? Or what do you make of this seeming change of heart here, Sam?
I don't think it's a change of heart. I don't think it's a change of position. I think it's a recognition and execution of the reality, right? You've got a bunch of different issues at play. And I think Trump came in and said, look, there's a problem here. We need to fix this. How do we fix this? We need to stop the war in Ukraine. How do we stop the war in Ukraine? Well, I'm not quite sure. I've got to try to figure this out. This is going to be complicated, etc. And I think his view is I'm going to apply pressure. I need to apply pressure. He's applied pressure on both sides. And he's kind of going back and forth to try to find a formula that will work.
I wonder, in that analysis, though, it seems like initially, though, at least if we take President and before that candidate Trump at his word, it didn't seem like it would be all that difficult. And he just needed to knock some heads together and get tough. And clearly, that has not worked. Do you think that it's fair to say at this point that Donald Trump either misestimated or underestimated Vladimir Putin?
I think he may have not realized how difficult the situation was and how pot committed Putin was. And I think that's perfectly fair because he's on the outside looking in. He does not have access to any of the classified intelligence. Now that he does, different situation. And we'll take it from there. That's kind of where I think he is. And I think he's very frustrated because he's inherited what I think is a mess. And I've said before, I think was completely mishandled at the commencement by Biden, and he's trying to fix it.
Interesting. Well, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about Ukraine before. And so I'm curious I do want to hear more about that. You feel that the Biden administration, I guess I feel that they mishandled it, but the way I feel is I'm an old Cold Warrior. And so I feel like they mishandled it by not doing a whole lot more quickly, but that might not be how you feel they mishandled it. So I'm curious as to your take on that.
I mean, I think the way that it was mishandled was just not responding very forcefully at the beginning to say, if you do this, the economic sanctions will be devastating. More targeted on-off sanctions that we saw, it would be pretty much complete destruction of your economy. Don't do this. And because we didn't have that element, we are where we are. And I think that's what's got screwed up. And I think at this point, it's just really hard to back down because you have a pot-committed man with nuclear weapons who could easily develop a rational reason to lob a tactical nuke into Kiev to improve his negotiating position. And on the other side, you have someone who is rightly saying, well, I didn't start this. Why should I have to give up my obelisks? And the response is almost because we got into this situation, and that's where we are, and that's unfortunate. But now that we're here, and we have to deal with it.
President Trump this week said that he's not on anyone's side, and maybe that's true. I don't know, but he's also said that he's reluctant to give Ukraine, or he's hinted that he's not really crazy about the idea of giving Ukraine long-range missiles. But I'm wondering if this goes on, and if Putin continues to be intransigent, which seems like that's his plan. Do you think there comes a point at which President Trump says, listen, I can work with Ukraine. They're at least willing to give me something. And so therefore, I might as well just work with them. We go all in with them. Or do you think he's more likely to just throw up his hands and say, you know what? Screw it. We're just walking away.
Get lost in the acoustic brilliance of 3D audio that surrounds you. Feel the embrace of the massage seats that adapt to your every move. Experience the warmth of a vehicle that welcomes you as you approach. We could tell you what makes a Lincoln SUV so extraordinary, but don't take our word for it. Take it on a test drive at the Lincoln Summer Invitation, with exclusive offers on now, only at your local Lincoln retailer.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
I think he's going to just continue to apply pressure to both sides. I don't think he's going to say, screw it, walk away one way or another. I think he's going to try to keep finding something that works. He's a deal maker. He's going to try to make a deal. And when you have a lot of trouble making a deal, and you have resistance, for lack of a better way to put it, you have a lot of issues like you have in this case, you may take a while to get an agreement that works. But I think he's going to keep pulling threads, pushing levers, and hope that there's something they can do there.
And, one big lever certainly would be if he were serious about secondary tariffs, that would be a big, big deal. But markets barely even moved when he made that announcement, because I don't think anyone really takes him seriously, because if we actually went through with those secondary tariffs on Russian energy, that would almost certainly spike global oil prices and fuel inflation, which is already starting to tick up. And I don't think that Donald Trump has the stomach for anything that would say trigger, I don't know, like 20-25% increase in the price of gas. I mean, so I don't think that's a real threat. And I guess, go ahead.
I think that's right. And I think this just goes to the, you're in a very different position now than you were earlier, and pulling levers may not work nearly as effectively as they would have previously. And because of that, you've just got a very awkward case.
Yeah, and I think some people would say it's almost a result of, as oftentimes there are so many things that interlock and, it make life a little more difficult. But because in part of President Trump's larger global tariff strategy, that gives him a lot less ability to maybe maneuver here with this, because we already have inflationary pressures, and at least for the time being, a Fed that wants to wait and see how the tariff thing kind of plays out before they do anything with rates. And so he's kind of stuck in this instance, and at least constrained in this instance, by things he wants to do in other sectors in the economy, it seems to me.
Yes, I think that's not wrong. And I think that just goes to, again, you have a lot more flexibility earlier on. And because he inherited this situation the way he did, and he wasn't able to, first couple of levers that he tried to pull didn't get the job done, and he may not have realized that based on the information available to him. Let's not forget where we are. He did not have access to the classified materials, to the briefings when he made his initial announcements. I think that you're right. We're just going to have to see where we are, and some of the steps he might have been able to take earlier would now have unintended consequences. So we see what we say.
I got to say, I think the plan for us to sell weapons to NATO countries and then give them to Ukraine, I think that's really a smart plan given who the president is right now, because it seems to me that if you want to convince President Trump of something, the best way to do it is to show him how it is concretely and very in the short term in the interest of the United States. And when we give weapons to Ukraine, well, that's just a net negative on the balance sheet. But when we sell them and then someone else gives them to Ukraine, all of a sudden now this is an opportunity for us to make billions of dollars. And I guess I'm just wondering, wow, why didn't NATO think of this earlier? Maybe they did. I don't know, but they'd rather have us give the weapons to Ukraine than have to buy them from us, certainly.
Well, it's they wanted us to pay the bill on that. That's a long-running issue and a separate kettle of fish. I think the other aspect there is not only is it not the balance sheet, but finally NATO is standing up and paying for things itself. So I think that's the other thing that would appeal to Trump is, well, not only is this good for balance, but NATO members are finally doing what they're supposed to be doing and contributing at an appropriate level to their security and the European security.
And I would argue, or maybe, I don't know if I believe this entirely, but I think you can make a case that this is the sort of thing that might actually be better for Western Europe, for NATO, not the U.S., but worse for the U.S. in the long run, because, of course, because we have provided so much of that security blanket since, during the Cold War and still after to much of what we used to call the free world back in the day, that, of course, cost us a lot, but it also allowed us to potentially do certain things and exert leverage that if the rest of the world, our allies, starts taking care of more of this themselves, well, that eliminates that obligation from us, but it also potentially gives us less leverage as well.
I don't think that's right, because at the end of the day, we're still the ones that make the weapons.
I see what you're saying. So as long as, well, I mean, there certainly are other weapons manufacturers, but we still are obviously big in that. So you don't really think we give up?
We're still providing support. We're still providing the vast majority of support. And all we're saying is, like, this was supposed to be an alliance. Let's take it back to, actual thinking during the Cold War. Everybody was contributing and everybody was working together and had real resources devoted to these areas. And where we were all pulling together, we were still the lead dog, but it didn't matter that others were contributing. No, I actually think it's a very good thing, and it strengthens the alliance and doesn't really cost us anything. I think it's just nonstop net positive.
And so in the end, I'm guessing you don't think that Donald Trump will be the president who lost Ukraine to Russia. Okay. I'm hoping you're right on that. And I got to say,
he will never give Putin a complete win. He has no interest in giving Putin a complete win. I think he might be the president who forced a restructuring of the borders in line with existing, national trends. Because remember, if you look at Ukraine, there are a couple of oblasts right on the border with Russia that really are, some would say, historically Russian, ethnically Russian, and support Russia. So he may be the president who carved up the boundaries, sure, but I don't think he would never back down on the full principle.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo, we're @politicsguys, or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,